Superheroes, vigilantes, mystery men, whatever you call them, their presence in popular culture cannot be underestimated. Be it in print, on the radio, or the big and small screen, these morally just crusaders have carved out a niche for their larger-than-life adventures in every medium. Whether battling the enemies of freedom abroad or fighting the good fight on the home front, the crime smashers stand as our last line of defense against the tide of villainy and evil, and they're all here at breakfast.
Breakfast!
We begin with Young Men 27 from Atlas Comics. In our first Titanic tale, the Human Torch and Toro discover no one can stop the hypnotist. While artist Carl Burgos enjoyed early success in the comics medium on titles like White Streak and The Thunderer, it was his creation of the original Human Torch that fixed his name in the history books. Working as a freelancer after the war, Burgos became affiliated with notorious publisher Myron Fass, producing the infamous Android version of Captain Marvel. Burgos later became an editor for Fass's Eerie Publications line of horror comic magazines, a favorite subject of this channel. Overlord of crime, the hypnotist moves to enact his deadly plan by February 1st, with only the Human Torch and Toro standing in his way. As our story begins, the fiery duo have bagged two petty criminals, but the freed hostages are left in a state of shock. The girls are hypnotized, the diabolical work of the Dead Face. When questioned, the lawbreakers abruptly keel over, victims of some dread post-hypnotic suggestion. Baffled, the authorities are summoned to care for the mesmerized girls, while Police Chief Wilson's daughter Betty is troubled by a hideous vision. The arrival of Torch and Toro breaks the spell, but things are amiss in the next room, as the same nightmarish presence that haunted his daughter drives the chief to burn valuable evidence. It's a dossier on someone named Corey Doon, a criminal with known ties to the international malefactor, the Hypnotist. Torch is informed that leaders the world over are being afflicted with the same condition as the hypnotized girls, and they're dispatched to investigate the oddly familiar-looking man in his home. And Doon takes his personal security seriously, with two full-grown lions as his first line of defense. And while that's fine for your average intruders, the wild beasts are frightened by the blazing invaders burning their way into the building. Within, the crime fighters discover all manner of evil artifacts, each one bearing the unmistakable likeness of Corey Doon. Their quarry escapes through a stone passageway, but it's a trap, with the walls abruptly closing in on our heroes. It is then the Dead Face appears, and Toro collapses in terror. Torch scoops up his unconscious partner in time for a hair-raising chase to India, Africa, and Italy, but they're always one step behind the rabble-rousing cultist. With Torch and Toro in hot pursuit, Doon returns to America and abducts Chief Wilson's daughter. Torch explains the hypnotist's plan will be implemented worldwide February 1st, so they need to bust this thing open tonight. The pair burn their way into the building, catching Doon in the process of sacrificing Betty. Turns out this guy is really Dara, the personification of all evil beings to ever exist. Using human sacrifice, he keeps the dark forces that wish to claim him at bay. However, having lost all those girls at the beginning really set him back, and without blood, the hypnotist rapidly decays into the Dead Face before turning to dust. Next up, it's The Return of the Red Skull by Don Rico and John Romita. That's right, freedom's most fearful opponent is back from the dead in a bid to capture the secret of the atom rockets. Our story begins with Captain America and Bucky battling their way through an army of henchmen in a valiant attempt to reach their greatest nemesis. However, superior numbers and his own relentlessness sees the Skull make a hasty escape. Undaunted, Cap and Bucky mop up the gang, then return to their civilian guises, determined to win round 2. Eventually, the patriotic pair are summoned to Oxbridge Road, a lonely spot at the foot of Vulture Mountain. They're met by this not at all suspicious-looking gent who directs them to his house above. It's a bit secluded, but hey, all the better to concentrate and plan in. And look, it's full of medieval torture devices. Turns out the old man's planning on using them, too, to get secrets out of Americans. Cap, in spite of all the cues, requires a visual aid, leading to this dramatic reveal. The Red Skull beckons his troops forward, and our heroes are overcome by sheer numbers. They're placed on the rack and tortured, with the Skull using psychology to weaken Cap's resolve. And it seems to work, as the Star-Spangled Sentinel soon offers up an address where the Nazi villain might find the atom rockets. Loading everyone into a covered truck, the Skull heads to the indicated location. Captain America relays instructions, as if in shock, encouraging the driver to go faster. Faster as he rounds a corner, as they'll need to run a roadblock. Once the truck is barreling along at 100 miles an hour, Cap and Bucky abruptly bail out, leaving the vehicle to slam headlong into a brick wall. And while a few henchmen survive the impact, Bucky discovers the Red Skull in the debris. Could he really be dead? Could it be the seemingly unstoppable monster bent on world domination is once and for all truly deceased? No need to stick around and find out, chum. It's somebody else's problem now. Pretty anticlimactic, really, but remember, this wasn't a great period for Cap. The characters struggled to stay relevant after the war, with stories of this era lacking the direction and appeal of earlier adventures. Let's see if his finny friend Namor the Submariner fares any better. Bill Everett was an American writer-artist, perhaps best known for his 1939 creation, Namor the Submariner. Everett left the Namor comic in 1942 to serve in the U.S. Army, but returned to his creation in 1953 and continued to work for Atlas Comics into the 1960s. Alongside Stan Lee, Everett created the Silver Age Daredevil before returning to Namor's adventures a third time in Tales to Astonish. Things get started with Namor deciding to apply for a job in a big aquatic show being held at the colossal Aquatic Auditorium. Guess it's a slow week in Atlantis. In spite of his obvious overqualifications, Namor lands the gig. And while Secretary Estelle balks at her boss's choice to hire Subby, Mr. Rouse is thrilled with his new employee. And so are these aquatic honeys, who perk up at the sight of old pointy ears. Our hero, however, only has eyes for a familiar face. It's Namora. Namor calls her baby, and she calls him an old sea dog, which is how men and women used to talk to each other in the good old days. Namora confides she's heard things about Rouse, and she's here keeping an eye on him. Meanwhile, Estelle reads Rouse the riot act about Namor. Why, if Mr. Big finds out what's going on here, it'll be curtains. The kind that kill you. Later that night, our heroes investigate strange doings outside the Aquatic Auditorium. Something is happening on the distant ship meant to provide power to the water show. Upon investigation, Namor discovers large pumps running from the ship into the inky blackness. Deep below lies a 17th century Frenchman. No, not Marc-René de Voyer de Palme, Marquis de Argenson. It's a boat, and someone's on board. Ghostly someones. It's the dead crew of this ancient derelict, and they're pretty feisty. Appears the ship above has been trying to raise the sunken wreck to retrieve the pirates' gold, but the pirates aren't having it. In the yacht above, Mr. Big demands they find the treasure tonight, with the aqua show meant to be a distraction. However, our heroes take this moment to move, diving not into the tank, but the ocean. They rally the ghost pirates, who then ensnare the divers in their own airlines, preventing them from descending. This enrages Big, who dons his own diver suit and descends. He discovers the treasure chest, but it inexplicably floats up and away from him. Upon reaching for it, the contents are dumped, nearly crushing him beneath the weight of the gold coins. Namor and Namora rescue Big and bring him to the surface, capturing Rouse for good measure. Things won't go well for these commies when word gets back to their masters of their failure. Meanwhile, Benny and Estelle go on to star in a Tijuana Bible, from the looks of it. As Johnny would say, weird, wild stuff. Continuing on with the scrappy sidekick theme, it's Black Terror 13 from January 1946. This issue was produced by Nidor Publications, with a cover by Alex Schomburg. Meek-looking druggist Bob Taylor is in reality the crime-busting crusader and nemesis of fascists, Black Terror. But Mink, you're certain to be saying, those are cows. Well, read on. A crying child purchases iodine and bandages from the drugstore, rousing Bob Benton's suspicions. Sidekick Tim follows the boy back to a butcher shop, where he discovers the mob has its hooks in the local meat market. Tim makes himself known and boldly offers to help, but what can one child do against the mafia? Well, he can break a jar or two, laying into the thugs with a practiced ease. However, the mobsters fight dirty, clocking Tim with a meat tenderizer. Meanwhile, Benton has grown worried about his ward and leaves the shop in the care of confidant Jean. He catches Tim's assailants carting the unconscious lad off and wades in with fists swinging. However, the heroic pharmacist is laid low by a thrown meat cleaver, allowing the cooks to escape with Tim. Once recovered, Benton becomes the Black Terror and questions the butcher, who points out one of the mobsters' delivery trucks. Terror hops in, catching a ride to an isolated farmhouse. It's there he finds the gangsters as well as a trussed-up Tim. And, if I'm reading this right, these maniacs are going to rub the kid out and mix his remains in with their illicit meat supply. Cue the Black Terror, who leaps in through the window. And while our hero fights unarmed, the criminals have no such compunctions, firing pistols wildly at the mystery man. BT pulls a wooden beam from above to use as a fly swatter, but this proves his undoing as the ceiling collapses. Who knew support beams actually held things up? Tied to a post, the gangsters plan on forcing Terror to watch as they buzzsaw his sidekick in half, which seems unnecessarily spiteful. The criminals then flee the scene to dispense their tainted meat, leaving our duo in a dire predicament. Unable to break the ropes, Terror instead wrests the post from its support and uses it as a bludgeon. Still tied to his back, the unrelenting hero slams the post downwards, smashing the buzzsaw and freeing his sprightly ward. The Terror twins rush to the front pasture, where the criminals have gathered waiting for pickup. All of the gunfire and commotion rattle the cattle herd, who begin to stampede. Our heroes manage to mount the bovine bludgeons as the wild cattle heedlessly grind their oppressors into the mud and offal. Riding out to the highway, Black Terror intercepts the meat wagon and busts clean through the windshield. In spite of superior numbers and firepower, the heroic duo turn the tide on the criminals, leaving the convoy shattered by the roadside. With that, Bob and Tim return to the pharmacy and the gentle chiding of Jean. But she's really just here to steal pills. Next up, an altogether unexpected adaptation of Doc Savage. A longtime feature in the pulps, it seemed natural for the Man of Bronze to make the leap to comic books. However, without the distinctive writing style of Lester Dent, the adventures of Doc and his companions take on a curious tenor when they battle the Beggar-King of Hate. And let's just take a moment to soak all this in, as artist Jack Binder worked hard on it. Ginger Terror Myrtle has grown tired of waiting for Monk to propose, but the big guy's not the marrying kind. Enraged, Myrtle grabs the wheel and stomps the gas pedal, sending the car veering out of control. The vehicle rockets through the streets, striking an apple cart and then a pedestrian. However, this isn't any ordinary victim. This guy is a professional. He's the Worm, and he swears vengeance. Monk attempts to mollify the Worm with a wad of cash, but money means nothing to the twisted little man. In his head is a formula that will make everyday citizens slaves to the lowly and disordered. So, he's got that going for him. The Beggar King, witness to the event, dispatches mute Saul to retrieve the Worm. He proposes that the two join forces, and the Worm agrees. But first, he'll need to test his formula, and Firebrand Myrtle is the ideal candidate. We then meet his army, the dregs of society who hate the world and everything normal. Yeah, lots of that going around. Elsewhere, Monk explains his strange encounter to Doc Savage, who can only watch bemused as the two lovebirds fuss. Soon, outside, a brick strikes Monk from behind, stunning him for long enough for Saul to grab Myrtle. The two bald titans fight in the street, but Saul doesn't play fair and pulls out a sap. Myrtle does her best to stall him, but the mute still manages to wallop Monk and make off with the girl. Myrtle wakes in the kingdom of the Beggar King. The Worm's formula is now ready, and she's the first to be a slave of sick and evil. They make her guest of honor at their royal feast, plying her with all manner of food. And while Myrtle is smart enough not to eat anything, she is tempted to take a single bite of this shiny apple, which is enough to make her slave to the Worm. In fact, when she's ordered to kill her friend, she complies without hesitation, nearly stabbing Doc in the back. A kerosene lamp is knocked over in the melee, and in the next moment the room is a mass of roaring, consuming flames. The king is pushed through the confusion towards the secret door, and our heroes follow, but the door slams behind before they can enter. From outside, snipers' bullets spray through the window, and Doc and the gang double back. They discover a trap door down in the pier and, using a nearby boat, make it outside, but the Beggar King is waiting and attacks with a grenade. Having escaped their pursuers, Beggar King and the Worm plot to carry out their sinister plan. Armed with the mind-bending poison, the derelict army secretly coat the produce throughout the city. The effect is immediate. People become living corpses. All activity grinds to a halt as pedestrians stop in mid-stride. The only movement is a green sedan, whose loudspeaker announces a message from the Beggar King at 6 p.m. Speaking of, he and the Worm enjoy their newfound power, gorging themselves on fine food, or what passes for it. It appears they've forgotten about Doc Savage and his pals, which will cost them. The derelict army attack Doc's car, but he mows them down, with anyone left standing getting a sock in the mush for their trouble. Confronting a machine gun-wielding Saul, Doc dazzles him with his magic ruby. Terrified, the giant turns and runs, Savage sending him colliding with his evil masters. With that, the king and his crown prince crash to their well-deserved deaths. Doc then takes to the airways, instructing the slowly reviving populace not to eat for 24 hours and that all tainted food is to be destroyed. However, Myrtle quickly slips Monk one of the remaining apples, using its mind-bending powers to trap the man in marital subjugation. And that's how I met your mother. But wait, there's one last story, and it's a doozy. Remember Jack Binder? His early fine art education provided him the technique and skill to create speculative one-pagers for Thrilling Wonder Stories magazine. Moving from Chicago to New York, Binder soon established his own comic studio. The creator of the original Daredevil, Binder also produced work for Timely, Lee Gleason, and Fawcett comics, like this iconic Mary Marvel cover. Top shelf stuff. Let's join Binder and Ajax the Sunman in The Nazis Taste Fire. Lana and Ajax are on vacation on the seashore, but trouble has a way of finding the flaming hero. A bedraggled old man steps from the brush, frightening Lana's horse, which throws her to the beach. It's Dr. Lenz, her former professor. Turns out he's escaped from a concentration camp just to find her and ask for help and springing colleague Dr. Beninsk, who's developed a formula for indestructible steel. Having got word his page count is the shortest of anyone in the book, Ajax strips down and gets to work. Manifesting as a blazing fireball, our hero streaks across the sky, coming down on a concentration camp outside Vienna. The encampment ignites a blazing conflagration the Nazis are powerless to stop. Once he has their attention, Ajax gathers a handful of flame and spells this ominous warning across the smoke-filled sky. Warplanes are dispatched, but are little concern to our hero. "1 Messerschmitt minus the Schmidt leaves 1 mess." Well, he might want to work on his banter, but his flame game is on point. The falling planes cause even more chaos, but the Krauts manage a lucky shot, hitting Ajax in the breadbasket with an artillery shell. Our hero is knocked from the sky and imprisoned, while the Nazis give Dr. Beninsk one last chance to cough up his mystery steel formula. Ajax, however, was just taking 5, and quickly stomps a squadron of Krauts into the mud. He stops the officer executing Beninsk in the nick of time, and although the crumb-bum pleads for his miserable life, Ajax gives him what he justly deserves. He and the doctor then climb to a nearby hill to witness the hero's fatal handiwork before flying home. I think the rest of you guys can sit down. Ajax can wrap this whole war thing up by himself. Crime smashing. It's not for everyone, but thankfully, there were a chosen few who not only accepted the challenge, but went to the trouble of getting dressed up for it. I, for one, would like to thank them for every scam they thwarted and every no-goodnik they busted. The world is a better place for it, even if I may pass on fresh produce for the time being. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this video, please give it the old thumbs up. If you'd like to support what we do here, buy some merch at the link below. Every shekel helps, Sahib. Until next time, I am Jason Mink, and I'll see you at breakfast.